So welcome to Founders Launch Office Hours. This session is for founders who want practical support on launch planning, readiness, and execution. I am excited to get started, but before doing so, I do want to go over some basic housekeeping rules. This is an office hours, and that means that there is an active discussion going on in this room. And the real value is going to come from you sharing and not just from me talking. The chat is open the whole time for questions and for reactions. I'll give a quick disclaimer. I may not be able to actively check the chat as I'm talking here and flipping through slides, but feel free to provide resources for your peers if there's a question that you know the answer to. Again, this is a community group discussion. It is not just me talking to you guys. The other point here, if you can please have your cameras on, it helps with the energy of the group, and it helps as we share our business stories. It helps in that we know that we're talking to other humans and not just a screen. And speaking of being in community, this is a judgment-free zone. So as you have questions or questions come up, please ask away, put them in the chat, and we'll go from there. Okay, so today's goal is to help you through launch readiness and answer questions before your launch gets chaotic or gets messy. We will walk through the high-level framework for launch operations, and I'll sprinkle in some examples of what works versus what doesn't work. And this will help us to set a foundation for how to think about launching a product or a feature. Then I'll move to the founder roundtable, and this is your time to talk about your specific business and any questions you might have today. And then lastly, we'll close out with key takeaways based on our conversation today. So who is this woman that's talking to you? My name is Lorena. Nice to meet all of you. And I've worked in SaaS operations for 10 years. I turn launch plans into execution, and I've done this repeatedly throughout my career. I've launched products, pricing models, expansion into new markets, and much more. I built this session because launching can be a lot, especially as a solo founder. It's likely very overwhelming. And I'm hoping that after this session, you'll have a framework to help you think about your launch plan in a more structured approach, a structured way. And now I would love to learn from all of you. So if you haven't yet, if you could jump in the chat. I see Magda and William and Juan have started sharing. But if you could jump in the chat and pop in what your business is, if you could share a link to your business, if you already have one that is ready to share with us, your location, and as you're thinking about your launch, what do you think is your biggest operational risk right now? So I see a Tocaya, Lorena. Hi, Lorena from LA. Juan, you shared your LinkedIn. Thank you. Anyone else want to share or have an app, a service you're launching? What is your business? If you have one, please pop it in the chat. Hi, Judy. And you're a creative director, designer. Thank you for putting your link in there to your portfolio. That looks pretty cool. William, and let me know if I'm not reading this correctly. William from Academy AI, scheduled for colleges. Magda, and you're in Dallas. Hi, Magda. You're a rising founder for an upcoming research project and separately an animal welfare and rescue research project. That's very cool. What kind of animals, Magda? Is there a specialty? I don't see an answer here, but I will share that I recently went to a bird rescue center and I loved it because I saw eagles and owls and it was pretty cool. All right. Fernanda, based in Indianapolis, Amare Studio. We specialize in web design, UX branding, and marketing. Hi, Fernanda, and you dropped in your LinkedIn. Thank you. JP, Silicon Valley, co-founder, CTO, Vemi Doc. Awesome. So we have some good, diverse businesses here. Looks like some community initiatives, nonprofits. Awesome. All right. Thank you for sharing. Please feel free to keep on populating that chat. Gina from SF Bay Area, strength communities to grow leadership using a spirit of generosity. And you're thinking through your operational risk, that's okay. If nothing comes to mind right now, Florita, love that name, statistician and recently finished an MBA, the Mauricio Gaston Institute for Latino Community Development. Hi, Florita. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our framework for launch readiness. Again, this is a session where I want everyone to participate, jump in the chat, have an active Q&A, share resources. So I'll go ahead and start going through the MVP framework that I drafted here, but let's have some collaboration in the session. Hi, Carol. AI educator, career and skills coach. Here's your LinkedIn. Help people transition to AI. Wow, awesome. That is the flavor of the day, and a lot of people need, and businesses need help with that aspect of it. Okay, here we go. This is the MVP launch framework. Here are 5 steps: align, plan, build, ready, launch. And each answers a question that founders ask aloud when they hire me. And we'll walk over them one by one. So the first step is align. And the little question that I put here is, how do I organize launch ownership? Who owns what? When there are multiple team members and you're building something that's new, brand new, people might not know what their role and responsibility is when it comes to executing that. Those things might not exist yet. So what I recommend doing in this step 1 framework of align is write down a simple 1-page alignment memo and provide it to your team members. That is, if you're working with a bigger team. Like for instance, Magda, you might be working with a few people when it comes to launching the animal rescue. If you are a solo founder, for Align, you might not have other team members to rely on to do other work. But what I would recommend here is to write down 3, what I'm calling non-goals, which is 3 things that you are explicitly not going to do for MVP. The reason is because we want to get you to launch. We don't want you to stall in building features that might not be necessary for your launch date. And so just pick 3 things that you will not do for version 1 of your launch. You can always iterate, you can always improve for second phase of your launch. But for now, what is that true MVP? And what is that lean case? And if you have any questions along the way, let me know. Step 2 is plan. How do I avoid a chaotic rollout? Here, what I would recommend you do is list your 5 top dependencies. Who are you waiting on for decisions? For example, when I was working on a new product, new pilot to a new customer segment, we had to create contracts from scratch. What did we want the pilot customers to agree to in this first iteration of the product? We had to write that down, and we had to, of course, clear it by legal. And if you have an accounting team, you have to clear it by them so that they tell you when it is that you can recognize that revenue. This is in a large enterprise environment. But if you're operating as a solo founder, what I would recommend here around plan is, do you have a clear outline of everything that needs to be done before launch and after launch? So, a quick, easy win for a solo founder with limited capacity would be write down the launch week calendar, 1 week prior, 1 week after. What are those specific tasks that you need to check off your list? Okay, and feel free to jump in here. I know I asked you at the beginning what operational risks you think you have right now. You can get your mind going as I go through each of these steps in the launch framework. What have you thought about? What have you already crossed off your list? What is new to your headspace that maybe you need to add to that to-do list? Where is it that we can help with questions during this session? Okay, step 3, build. What are the dates that other team members need to hit? Again, if you have multiple team members, you might need to use a RACI. If you're familiar with a RACI, you're not familiar with a RACI, it's basically a swim lane, a table that tells you who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. The reason you do that is to keep everyone on track. Going back to that example of the contract, maybe I'm responsible for drafting some very lightweight contract terms, but an attorney is accountable for signing that off. Am I going to get to launch with a drafted contract, but no actual attorney signing that off? It's probably something that's going to keep me in the red and something that might push my launch date out if it's not completed. So for solo founders, I would say you probably have a whole bunch of things that you need to get done before you launch your program, your service, your product. Pick 3 tasks that only you can do and try and delegate 3 tasks to someone else. Maybe a friend is helping you in these early days, or maybe you can hire a virtual assistant to help you with some of those tasks. Try and see what you can delegate, because there's probably a lot going on and you're focused so much on the product build that the operational aspect might not be top of mind. And here I see Magda, because I'm building research products, I struggle to find experts to validate the research product. It took a bit, but eventually did find an expert willing to provide their stamp of approval. That's awesome. That's a big win, especially if you're looking for that subject matter expert and it's really hard to find that person. To finally be able to find that needle in the haystack must be a big win. Congrats. Okay, so step 4 that I have here is ready. Are you actually ready? And this sounds kind of silly to list here, but let's say you're launching a product and someone has to pay for that product. Everything's set up, your account is set up, you put the API in your product, everything's good to go. Did you actually test the payment terminal? Again, going back to the contract terms, does your contract have a final sign off that's ready for a customer to see? As a solo founder, you're going to have to test these steps yourself from beginning to end to make sure that you really are ready to receive your first customers. And I would add, as a solo founder, to also think through the customer onboarding process as well. So, what does it look like once a customer actually signs your program or enrolls in your service? What does that onboarding process look like? How can you make that as smooth as possible so that your customer has a good experience and wants to continue working with you or perhaps buy an additional product from you? And last but not least, launch. Again, if you can, do a rehearsal, do an end to end testing of the whole customer journey from when they are interested in what you have to offer, if they have to go through any systems, any signups. Pretend you're the customer, go through the workflow and see if it all works as you intended it to work. And be ready to answer any and all questions that customers might have on that first day as they are onboarding, or maybe something broke and it's not working as planned. Just be ready for those questions to come in. So I'm going to go back to that initial question. What is your operational risk, or what step out of these five do you think would trip you up the most? Okay, I see Magda, you put a question here around how people are pursuing funding, and maybe we'll have some time at the end for others to jump in and talk through what they found in terms of funding. And yep, you're finding the expertise was one of the big blockers for you. Um, Rafael, I see you posted something here. You're a consultant web developer. Angelica. Okay, Rafael, are you? I'm gonna call on you. Can you come off mute? All right. So, and you don't have to define it according to these five buckets, but is there operationally, what do you think is your biggest risk right now when it comes to your business or launching a new service?
Um, well, funny enough, but my business is really not related to software. It started more as a, I guess, as a hobby, immediate thing. So, but I'm a solo. I'm doing the business by myself. So I do have aspirations to grow my business, and I think that for now, the biggest risk for me to that I cannot take yet is get bigger equipment. I have a still screen business, and I started very small, just to accommodate a few friends. But I've been able to acquire bigger clients, not big enough that I can actually do it outside my house because I just have a room. But I do have aspirations to do so. Right now, I think that's the biggest thing is being able to acquire bigger machinery that will allow me to get more volume orders, and then step away and then hire someone else and be able to do that, and actually spend more time on my actual full time job. So I don't know if that answers your question, but if we can kind of set it to a software or agency type of format that you're probably going with.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have a side business that you want to kick off. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, well, I kicked it off already, but obviously right now it's so small right now that it's not my full time. It's a side job as a whole business, but I do have aspirations to make it bigger. And the biggest thing or the next step will be acquiring bigger machinery, and that will be probably my the biggest thing I need to do. Plan it accordingly. See when it's actually necessary for me to purchase the big machinery.
Okay, and who would your customers be at that point?
At that point, right now, I'm doing one organization that requires, extra like they require a certain amount of merch to be printed, and it's very small quantity, but because it's a small business, I'm okay with that. My next client will be like smaller organizations, whether that's a soccer club, a baseball club, local churches. Those are the ones that I feel like I would like to serve instead of going very public. I don't aspire right now to being like in a front store where people just pass by and anyone can just have that. My model is actually out of the traditional sales screen because I provide a storefront for the groups. So if they want to have a certain type of shirts or design, I will set up a storefront and they can their group or clients like if it's a salon or anything, they will go and order those shirts. So that's aside to what a traditional sales screen does. You know, that probably my software engineer or my tech savvy allow me to think about this little side thing that will make it more appealing for small groups that don't have, they don't want to go collecting money or collecting sizes or figure out all these things like shipping. I'll set the storefront and then let their clients or group members do the order themselves. So yeah, my next clients will be other small groups as well that
Okay.
will need this type of service.
Okay, and I'm familiar. I have a 5-year-old in soccer, so I'm familiar with the silk screener and the soccer uniforms and all that good stuff. So I would say when you are ready to take that step, probably what I see as one of the bigger tasks to take on would be around step two, which is plan, right? How are you going to approach those community groups like the churches or the soccer teams to let them know that you are open for business and can handle that larger volume of, I don't know, a 20-person soccer team that's coming to you for new jerseys? And if it is a community organization, do you want to give them a discount that you wouldn't normally give to a for profit business? So, thinking through that business development plan, through that communications plan with your customers, and what those special terms might be for your community groups could be something that once you're ready to take the leap, you have the machinery, you want to expand, could be something to work on.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, Yeah, you're making me think that far because I haven't thought that far. But top of my head, I can think of what I currently do with clients is that every time I ship an order, I have a printed thank you card with a discount that I generate before I send it to them. So it's specific for that person, and they will just have that code for 10% so they can come back again anytime in the future and then they redeem that. And because we call it tribes, but it's a organization that's focused on men, and we each group is called a tribe. So when the tribe decides to have the storefront again
Hmm.
open, then those members, or we call them tribe members, a tribesman, they will have that discount. So and I have actually this year have several of those tribes come back again and request for the storefront to be open again. And actually, these 2 weeks I've been busy, so that has worked, and I assume that will be something that will also encourage baseball teams to know that they have a discount looking forward. They have a storefront easy for them just to, you know, send me an email or text, and then I'll set that up again and whatever changes they need to do. I'll do it. And also another thing that I do it can be appealing, and it is appealing for the groups that I usually targeting right now, is that screenshots usually just allow you to do one type of garment. So if you want to print shirts, you have a high minimum of 18 pieces, and then obviously you pay per color and all that stuff and placement. Where with me, you just pay this screen setup, and you are free to give me whatever type of, if you want a shirt, you want a hoodie, you want shorts or a tent top. In California, I'm in Virginia, so I have clients in California, tent tops. I can do that, and they don't have to pay extra because at the end of the day, they're doing pre-orders. I get upfront their payment, then I know exactly the sizes. I know the quantities. I'll order the blanks. I'll get those. So for the most part, I did this model because then I don't have to put money up front. I don't have blanks, at home stored in here, just waiting for for a client to order. So I actually have the money from them, and then order those blanks, and then when I get those, and then I start printing. So I think that will be also appealing for other groups, small groups that are looking to just have this very easy for them to just go ahead and order.
Thank you for sharing, Rafael.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else want to share operationally where they're at and any questions you might have for me or for the group?
All right, I'll step down.
Magda, I see you, but there you are.
I think the thing that I have struggled the most with both of my research projects from an operational standpoint was monetizing. Finding the resources to learn how to monetize a product that I've seen similar products, but they have a bigger foundation. They have a stronger platform. They have bigger partners. They come with, dare I say, just bigger budgets. And so when you're starting something from scratch, monetizing has been the biggest challenge operationally. I mean, the expertise was too, but I got that one covered. It was just the monetizing.
And so, can you give a little bit more insight as to what is a competitor research business that does a good job monetizing?
Well, so when I looked at some of them, a lot of them were already existing foundations within bigger companies. So, for example, if I wanted to take a look at I think it's the CARES Foundation that's part of PetSmart, their funding comes from the store and the products that they sell. So they have a completely different avenue for that funding. And so I broke down what I was doing and just tried to figure out what I could build support for. And luckily I did come across somebody who liked the project enough, who said that they, once I finished getting through all the paperwork, they are happy to put an event together, a dinner together, to get people to come in, help raise money for the project that we're building. But I think when I was looking at terms of research and I was taking a look at, again, I should note that I used to work at the Federal Reserve, so that's another system that has already an entire platform for research, right, where it is literally built on a lot of the research that's being done. So it's been a challenge to go grassroots, even though I know grassroots, and so that's ultimately the direction I opted for. And finding this person who said, "Hey, you know what? Let's put a dinner together. Let's invite people who want to donate. Let's go that route. Build something. Build the MVP." So I'm doing the seed project of it, just so that I can have something in public. I did have an angel. I can't remember what the group is called right now, but I mean, obviously they require a fee too, but they like the product and they said, "Hey, we want to help you find funders once you get it going." So it's been a mind shift in how to approach monetizing, but monetizing just literally stuck it really stuck with me for a long time about how to move forward. And I thought, I don't even know who to ask these questions to. So it's been a lot
Magda,
of asking.
are you setting your research project as a nonprofit? Because it sounds like there are some nonprofit aspects to it, and certainly the fundraising might work best if it is a nonprofit entity.
Yes. So the animal welfare and rescue project is actually going to have 3 pillars. And so the research part of it itself is, I haven't figured out if that one's going to be nonprofit or not. One of the other pillars is going to be nonprofit. The third one is not going to be nonprofit. So we're trying to figure out how to make the 3 come together and work so that maybe one can support the other 2 and vice versa. One of them has room for sponsorship and donation. So that's the other element. Maybe branding, marketing, that component. The second research project, which is a journalism project, that one has support from a university. So they're going to take care of the funding. I opted to pursue a collaboration.
Okay. Okay. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of supporters. You have the university, you have the person who wants to partner with you to hold a fundraising event. So you kind of maybe have to work on some of the structure aspects of it. Perhaps what do you want to set up as a nonprofit versus a for profit?
Yes.
But in an event, in your scenario where you have multiple players and maybe the person that wants to donate and wants to help you create that funding or that funding event might become a bigger player down the line, given the mission of your organization. What I would say when it comes to the launch framework is I see Align step 1 as something important for you to focus on because there is a lot of passion and people want to give. And so how do you, if you have this worthy cause that people are already interested in, how do you delegate and how do you assign responsibility to other groups or other people without causing just confusion as to who does what, right? What is Magda going to do versus this supporter going to do in order for the fundraising event to be a success when the date comes around?
Honestly, the PetSmart, understanding the CARES Foundation and the PetSmart connection is what prompted me to pursue the journalism project through a university and say, get them to be the partner in it. But I will say that structurally, the problem isn't the project itself or the partners itself. It's an internal gap in valuing and really understanding separating the feelings from the logistics of monetizing, which created an operational gap for me. But like I said, I worked through that.
Yeah, maybe your partner that wants to help you with the fundraising end can do some brainstorming with you as well in terms of how to separate those two things, the mission aspect of it versus the monetization.
Yes, it's learning baptism by fire, but we're getting there.
Well, congrats. That's really cool to hear that you already have so many people interested in what you're doing.
Fingers crossed. I'm trying to keep it up. I'm trying to just get to that point where I can hit the launch button. And it's taken a lot of conversations, right? It's because these conversations don't readily exist unless you pay into a cohort or engage someone's services. But these questions about the things that don't come up in a launch framework, right? There's like the money. Where's the funding for this? It's one of those conversations that sits in the background and it's quieter and it's not as much of a public conversation, and there aren't people that are sitting at the table all the time that want that necessarily give that information over or share that information. And thank you, by the way, for doing that today, because it's usually a service that people provide.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. I'm happy to do it. And it takes a lot of almost user research, right? Discussions on what works. And I see JP's comment here. It seems to me that there is still room for better, finer solution definition. We do have 15 minutes left, so I would want to ask if there's one more participant here that wants to share the stage and talk through their program or their business, and get some thoughts from the room. Anyone else? Fernanda, I see you have a question here. How do you find your specific niche? Do you want to talk about this a little bit more?
Hi.
Hi, Fernanda. Thank you for hopping on. Camera on.
Thank you.
Ready to go.
Yes, I was trying to join. This is why it took me a minute. But thank you so much for having this session. It has been super insightful.
I'm glad.
But yeah, my question is, how do you find your specific niche? For me, I started Amare Studio. I launched in November, so I'm still fairly new to like the industry and like finding my specific niche. So far, my clients have been kind of like all over the place in different industries. I really have a passion for working with Latinos and people of color. So I have worked with founders within these identities as well as nonprofits. But then in terms of like different industries, I've worked with clients from like healthcare and, like construction. And it's just been kind of like all over the place, which has been really insightful, just trying to gauge where I find myself that I click better in specific industries. But exactly like, how do you narrow down? How do you find your specific niche?
So when you say niche, are you talking about the products you offer, or are you talking about the clients that you want to offer your products to?
I would say a little bit of both. I think since starting, I have kind of narrowed down my specific services, but at the same time, I'm still open to, my specific service is I want to narrow down to web design and web development. I have a master's in human computer interaction, so I feel like that is where I bring my expertise a little better. My background is in graphic design and branding, so this is why I offer branding and marketing. But I don't want to be known as like, oh, she does branding and marketing. I want to be known as the web designer, web developer. So, in terms of services, I feel like I've narrowed down in that side, but now it's more of like my clientele, like who am I trying to attract?
Who do you want to attract? You said you want people of color.
Definitely Latinos, people of color. I'm really interested in like the nonprofit sector, and working with organizations that are mission driven and that we have similar values, similar interests in terms of like advocating for marginalized communities and our own communities. So I feel like in that side, maybe like nonprofits would be something that I'm really interested in.
I know of a couple of foundations where you could um, provide time as a consultant. Like the Taproot Foundation comes to mind. When I was in nonprofit before I was in tech. We used Taproot to help to get help with our marketing and to get help refining our branding assets. But I'm actually curious because I know we're such community oriented people. I'm curious to know in the chat if anyone has some ideas as to how to better enter that nonprofit space with web design services.
Yeah, I would really appreciate it. And I have used Taproot before. I absolutely love the platform. I love the connections that I've made through Taproot.
yeah, I mean, the consultant that helped us was definitely exceptional. She was great.
Yeah, that's amazing. Definitely, there is a lot of great connections that have come out from Taproot.
Okay, I'm not seeing much in the chat when it comes to how to enter the nonprofit space with your design services. But I mentioned Taproot. JP, you're saying a good way is to volunteer. Fernanda, that I guess that was a back of my mind question. Are you looking to get paid for these services with nonprofits?
Yeah, ideally, I would love that, but I have also done a lot of pro bono with nonprofits. So that is something that, I'm really open to volunteering, but ideally, I would like to also make a living out of this.
Yeah, and okay, here are some more comments. I think JP and Magda have a similar point of view. Volunteer to start getting some referrals and build your network.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your input and your insights.
Mary is saying maybe going on Idealist, identify the orgs and causes. Are you familiar with Idealist too, Fernanda?
No, I haven't actually. I haven't heard of it.
I think it's specifically for the nonprofit sector. So that's a really good recommendation. I had forgotten about that org.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm going to look into it.
And conferences. These are all really good suggestions. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up because we have 10 minutes left. And Jolise is also putting some comments in here. As someone who runs a nonprofit, not going to lie, referrals are everything. So, Fernanda, there you go. Maybe some work with Jolise to do some web design stuff. All right, Taqueria Slack. Shout out for Taqueria Slack. All right, so to wrap it up, since we have 20 minutes left, we already did the founder roundtable. Thank you to Magda, Fernanda, Rafael for jumping on here, and thank you for everyone in the chat for putting your comments and your questions in here. Some takeaways, and I pre-populated this based on what I've heard. So, common operational launch risks when it comes to small ventures, whether tech or not. The ownership vacuum. Solo founders assume that future me will handle launch day. Without a plan, launch can be chaotic for you and potentially for your customers. I also mentioned this earlier in the presentation, shipping versus stalling. Let's really define what MVP is and not keep on adding more services, more features. Let's just stay focused on that MVP critical path. And then your first 10 customers. Ideally, when you launch, you know your customers by name. You don't just launch and hope that someone will eventually buy your service someday. Because you want your launch to be as successful as possible. So yes, 10 minutes. I will do more Q&A if there are more questions. But I wanted to get to my last slide here. There are 3 ways to engage. Everything is free 99. You can get the checklist for detailed launch tasks for solo founders. This is taking into consideration that there isn't a team behind you, perhaps, that's helping you. It's just you. And according to those 5 buckets that we went over, what are those to-dos under each of those 5 buckets that you should think about as you reach your launch date? and then share your story with me. I am researching what breaks solo founders, and I'd love to perhaps do another office hours, and hearing what you're struggling with will help me decide what to build next. And then last but not least, you can follow me on LinkedIn for those future office hours that may or may not come, depending on interest. But I'll stop right there. I'll see if anyone else has questions in the chat or wants to come off mute. I'm happy to stay around. If there are no questions, I will also give some time back. All right. Thank you, everyone. Love the active participation in the chat, and hope you stick around for the next session. Bye.